Okay, before you start this video, make sure you read this. You read this selection from Antaeus. You want to do that first when you're taking the STAAR test. You just do a quick read through without worrying about anything, just to read through it. Don't skip this part up here where we'll have important information they'll give us sometimes. Like this one, we know now that the boys have established this after much hard work. That could be important. This is from one of the friends, like back home in Alabama, where he would do stuff like this. So we get some interesting, important information up here. Then go back and do a quick annotation. What I did was, instead of worrying too much about it, I just kind of summarized what was going on. This will really help you in longer selections to keep track of what's going on. You can do this during your first read through, or you can go back through and do this, but I would definitely summarize to the side what is happening. We get a first person narrator up on a factory roof, and they probably shouldn't be. They have to be young by the way that the man is addressing them as boys. These strangers in suits scare them, and we find out they've been growing grass. TJ is proud of it. He's been growing watermelons. They get threatened. TJ, for some reason, is unfamiliar with authority. Then the roof wasn't in use. TJ kind of talks back to him. The man orders them to clear the roof, so on. So I'm just making notes as I go, right? Like little summaries off to the side. Then I come down to the questions. What is the point of view used in the excerpt help the reader understand? And I'm gonna do process of elimination for sure on the reading section. I would do it on revise and edit as well, but definitely on here. What is the point of view used in the excerpt help the reader understand? Well, as I marked up in the beginning, it's first person point of view. We never get the narrator's tone or name, but we get we're viewing mostly TJ, and so since we're looking at how TJ is, we can know it's not how the adults found the garden. That doesn't, any of the characters could have showed us that. How long the boys worked on the garden? Well, we don't even really find that out, other than they worked hard and long on it. But any of the boys could have told us that as well. How the boys agreed to help TJ plant the garden, it doesn't even go into that. So just by process of elimination, it's pretty obvious that it is how TJ's reactions differ from the reactions of the other boys. Having our first person narrator watch TJ, we can see that he reacts totally differently, and so that makes sense. How is the first sentence of the excerpt important to the plot? Well, the first sentence, if we go back up, is an adult voice said behind us, "What are you boys doing up here?" Okay, so does it foreshadow the resolution? Well, foreshadowing would be it hinting at how the story is resolved. Well, them being what are they doing up there? That doesn't really have anything to do with the resolution. It introduces the main character. Well, that man isn't the main character. We don't even really get his name, and he's not there for the whole story. It initiates the main conflict. Well, now the conflict here is that these boys are on a roof and they shouldn't be, and they're doing work up there that they shouldn't be doing. So that could be it. And it presents an unanswered question. Well, we know it's not that, because the question is immediately answered what they're doing up there. So, boom, C. In paragraph 30, what does the word laboriously mean? Well, we would go look at it to get context, where the soil carried so laboriously upward to the light and the sun cascaded swiftly into the dark areaway. This is when they're throwing that soil down. The green blades of grass crumpled and twisted in the falling. So from context, we can kind of get an idea of what it means, but also we'll have a dictionary at our disposal, so we should look it up as well to get the denotation. So then we're getting denotations and connotations, and we can kind of figure out the best answer. And at great cost, well, it was slightly at great cost, but that's not really in the definition of laboriously. So this one could throw you off if you were just looking at context. For good reason, that one doesn't make sense at all. Quietly in secrecy, that doesn't make sense at all. So slowly and with difficulty. I know that because I looked it up and I looked at the context. In paragraph 20, we get this quote, "It's our earth, it's our land, can't nobody touch a man's own land." The irony of this quotation is that it calls attention to, well, as I was summarizing, I thought it was funny that they were kind of fighting, like these guys saying, like, you can't mess with our stuff when it's their, it actually belongs to the other guy, technically. So that is irony for sure. So the love TJ has for the outdoors while he is on a man-made structure, we don't really see that so much. It does. We do see that he is like loving this this endeavor they've undertaken, but not necessarily just his love for outdoors in general. The rooftop being abandoned and the men still caring about its welfare. Well, that is true. That doesn't really go with the quote. It doesn't match the quote. It's our earth. It's our land. Can't nobody touch a man's own land. And the men don't really care about the welfare of the roof so much anyway. They're worried more about their structure being like destroyed. The fact that TJ does not have the right to use the rooftop despite creating the garden, I think that matches with the quote, right? It's our earth, it's our land. Well, it's actually not. It's the land of the owners of the unnamed man. The effort used to create a garden when it can be easily destroyed. We don't see that at all in this quote. We see that in the story, but not in this quote. So we know that's C. The central theme of the excerpt. This one's tough. Adults often lose their sense of accomplishment as they age. Well, we don't really see like so much of that, although that could be implied in the story. But it's like we don't really see if these men who are kicking them off have lost their sense of accomplishment. So it can't be that. People take pride in their work. Well, the boys are super proud of the watermelon patch, so it could be. And they worked hard. It keeps pointing out how hard they've worked on it and so how great they felt about it and all that. So it could be that one. People rely on authority figures to maintain order. Well, in the story, like, yeah, these authority figures come and kick the boys out, but it's seen as like a bad thing, basically. So that's not going to be a theme that the author is trying to get across, a message that they're trying to give to you. It is important to recognize the value of green spaces. Well, while there is a little bit of that in there, like we as readers should probably recognize the value of green spaces. That's not necessarily the gist of the whole story. That's something that we could come away with in our own like interpretation, but we need to be able to point to the text and say, where is this in the text? And I don't see that in the text. We do have this thing at the end where he's like sucking the greenness out of the last blade of grass, but it's more where he's contemplating the destruction of the work that they did. And then this whole paragraph here, if it took less time than you would think, the task of destruction is infinitely easier than that of creation. I think all of that is pointing towards this people take pride in their work theme. But that one is tough. What does TJ's climb back up the fire escape in paragraph 28 reveal? Well, if we go up here and we look, he turned around and started up the fire escape again, almost running against the effort of climbing. We followed slowly. So he's flying up the fire escape. They're following along slowly. This is right after he says, they ain't going to touch my earth. They ain't going to lay a hand on it. Come on. And so that's something we should look at in the answers. He has difficulty following rules. Well, that is not really shown in his climb, right? His climb doesn't show that he has difficulty following rules. He enjoys being the leader of a group. We don't really see joy. He behaves in ways that others consider immature. Now, these boys seem to kind of look up to him even. So he takes action once he makes up his mind. Yep, that makes sense. He says, come on, and as he's thought of something, and then he races up. So there we go. In paragraph 25, why does Blackie say they own the building? We go back up to that. Paragraph 25. I even put over here, like, the other kids who are more familiar with authority see this as fruitless, no pun intended. but they are like familiar with like authority figures like shooting him down, right? So when Blackie says with finality, like this is the last word, they own the building, he's saying we can't do anything, right? So we go and look at our answers. Is he trying to help the men? Well, no. Why would he want to help the men? They're against them. To rally the boys to go against what TJ has planned? No, he's not really trying to like pump up the other boys to fight against TJ. To indicate the limitations of what the men can do, now he's admitting the men have all the authority. To convince TJ that it's pointless to resist. Yep. In paragraph 32, what does the blade of grass represent for TJ? A final remnant of something precious? That could be. The harvest he anticipated? Definitely not. He was anticipating watermelons. The new home he has found? Oh, we don't see anything about home there. He's like kind of sad, right? His friendship with the other boys? I don't think him sucking on the grass to get the greenness out of it has like anything to do with the other boys at all. And he just disappears and like flees from them. So this one makes the most sense for sure.